Righty ho. So, starting to get the dash back installed, and I think it's looking pretty good, to be honest. The only bit I'm not really happy with is the join right there, where the obviously the textures don't match, but you know, what I should have probably done is laid them all out as they are there, wrapped it in one piece and then split it, just so all the lines match up, but you know, live and learn. On the whole though, I think it's looking alright. I'm not displeased with that at all. Haven't put the speedo in properly yet because I need to order a new speedo cable. Mine was falling to pieces and I've ordered the wrong one. I didn't read the description properly, and I got one for a non-overdrive car, and you need one for an overdrive because they are different. But yeah, on the whole, I don't think that's too shabby looking for an amateur effort. So what else are we doing? Well, we're sort of concentrating on the interior bodywork for the moment, until I can find myself a new pivot pin for that choke and put that choke back together. I'll sort of leave the engine alone for a moment, just, you know. But yeah, interior of the body, obviously we started painting the boot in our black, and I've carried it on over the hump there where the fuel tank goes, on top of those arches, and run it down to the start of the tunnel there. So that's all now in black, and I think that looks, again, I think it looks pretty nice. Is it super professional? No. Is the car going to be worth tens of thousands when it's done? No. It's never my intention. I'm not that good. But we are starting to go through these floors. So, at the moment, I'm concentrating on the front of the driver's side, this one in here. And as you can see, I've been buzzing it back with my wire wheel on the drill there, just to sort of get down into it a little bit more and see what's going on. There's a fair amount of filler in it, which is never really something you want to find, because generally, you know, whilst filler has its purpose, it can also be used to hide things. So you don't really want to find lots of filler, but on a car that's 40 years old in England, you know, good luck finding one without filler on it. Obviously our weather here is very, very corrosive. So all the white you see in there is where I've been buzzing filler back, and I've taken it back down to the metal. Wherever I found filler, I've gone down further to the metal just to make sure there's no gaping holes in it. And so far so good. There are a couple of holes I've got to sort out. There is one there where they've put that patch in the corner there. You can see it's starting to go around it, so I'll cut that patch out and put a bigger patch in there. I need to put a little patch in down there as well, where they've just cut one out and left it. You can see there's a replacement floor underneath it, so it does still have strength. But you know, if you're going to go around and start welding stuff up, I suppose you may as well fill all those in as well. There's another one down there, and there's a very small one just in front of that panel, just about there, if you can see it. That's a shadow there, by the way, not a massive hole. So yeah, a few holes to sort out, but on the whole it's pretty good. Apologies for the noise. I can't stick a screwdriver through anywhere, so that's normally a pretty good sign. Obviously if I really wanted to, I could hammer it in, but you know, that's not the point, is it? Yeah, so I'm going to carry on buzzing this one back for a moment, and then start to look to cut those areas out and patch them in. Obviously there's going to be a fair amount of patching to do on this, you know, as I said, it's kind of one of those things really, you can't really escape it if you're taking on a restoration project. You know, it is probably, unless it's lived inside its entire life and requires no welding, then, you know, fair play to you if you find a car like that, but most of them aren't. And if you do find a car that's lived inside its entire life and requires no welding, you are going to pay for it. You know, this car at the end of the day was £1,000. That's what I paid for it. If I was to break it now and just sell off all the bits, I could make my money back on it quite easily. So there's always that in the back of your mind, you know, you're probably not going to lose money on it. Yeah, you know, it can be a bit of a funny one. But, you know, there we go. as they say, it is what it is. I've decided, you know, I'm going to see this project through to the end, and I'm going to do just that, and I'll do it to the best of my ability. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. But like I say, if you got bad metal in there, you may as well just cut it out, have done with it, square it off to a decent sized patch. If there's one thing I've learned about I mean, there's a lot of things I've learned about welding, but one of the things I've learned is don't try and cut around the rust the neatest shape possible. You know, don't try and cut the smallest amount out as you can. There is literally no point whatsoever. You may as well just chop it out, make a big patch, because welding a big patch in is just as easy, if not easier, than doing small convoluted shapes trying to patch in little bits of rust. It's just not worth it. Like in that corner where that dodgy patch was a minute ago and had a few spots around it, not worth messing around with, not worth trying to just put a patch over those spots and leave the existing patch in there. Just cut it out, make sure you're back to good bare metal, and then just put a nice square patch in. It's a lot quicker and a lot easier. If you've got a small patch, like for example, if we look at this patch here, so we've got a small patch there, not even the size of a 5p. You can see there's another bit of metal underneath it already, so there's good metal under it. This is just the old metal on top. But if you were trying to cut that out and patch that in, if you were so inclined, it's not worth cutting a small patch out just to go over that. You may as well cut a big patch out all the way around it and put a big fat patch in on top of it, because you'll guarantee as soon as you touch that with a MIG welder, you'll start to blow through. You can see the metal around it. You see it's got that orange peel sort of texture to it, and it's gone very dark. That is really indicative of steel that's seen better days. Now that bit, if I push on that hard, is that actually not bad. I can't bend and flex that. It's not cracking and crunching. But generally, when you see metal like that, it means it's seen better days. And again, as soon as you get the welder on it and you touch it, it will just blow through, and you'll keep blowing through, and then you'll end up just having to either A, cut bigger patches out, or B, try and sort of drizzle weld into the holes you've just made. Oops. Whoa, what's going on here? Sorry. Accidentally hit the zoom button. Yeah, it's just not worth doing. So cut it back, make it big, stick a nice big fat patch in over it. It's a lot quicker, a lot easier, and you're a lot less likely to blow through on your welds and end up putting patches on top of patches. Also, the other really, really important thing for any of you would-be welders out there, when you're preparing this for welding, prep is like 9/10 of welding. Where you've got an edge like this, for example, you know, I've got bare metal on the very edge there, and you might think, well, that's fine, that's no problem for the weld to take to. Don't even think about it. You want to buzz this paint back a good ½ inch or so, all the way around, more like what I've done on that side. I've left myself a good ½ inch of bare metal there to attach to, because if there's anything between your weld and your patch, it won't take properly, and you'll end up doing it twice. It's just not worth it. So always take your time, get a flappy paddle on your grinder or a wire wheel, and go right back to nice shiny, but even if you have to do it by hand, go back to nice shiny bare metal before you even think about welding it. Or like I say, it just won't go in properly. You'll be zapping away thinking, brilliant, this is going in lovely, and then you'll get to the end and go, doesn't quite look right. You'll stick a screwdriver under it just to check it, and it will pop straight off, and you will lose the will to live because you realise you have to start again from scratch. So make sure your areas are clean. That's obviously, I'm not a professional welder by any stretch of the imagination, but if you've watched my previous videos, I've done a fair bit of welding on the chassis, and at least 2 of the patches I put on the chassis I had to do again, because I wasn't happy with them, because I didn't go back to bare metal anywhere near enough, and they didn't take well at all. So yeah, take it from someone who spent hours doing needless welding. Right, what else have we done today? So I managed to get the steering linkage sorted, finally. No matter how I put it together, it wouldn't work. The wheel would just spin, and then I found there was a piece missing, which was get you in there. That little bracket with the silver nut on it, that little 2-piece bracket, and it's got a grub screw in the middle. If you can probably can't even see it there, but yeah, it's basically just like a U bracket that goes on the bottom. there's a flat edge on the rod that goes down to the steering rack, and obviously that aligns on the flat edge, and then you do the grub screw up nice and tight, and that obviously bites the two together, which, you know, makes perfect sense. But when you've just got a few spare bits lying around, you don't always realise what they're for. But good old Haynes manual to the rescue. So now, when I turn the wheel, I get movement of the wheels. However, I do have some play in the track rod end on that side. I'll see if I can get you down there. It's very hard to show, but you can just see the track rod is moving when I move the wheel, but the wheel isn't. And that side has been an absolute nightmare to do up. The problem with these track rod ends is you've got the track rod here, you've got a thread that goes down through this arm, and then you've got a nut that goes on the bottom. The problem is when you do that nut up, the internal thread just spins with the nut, and there's no way you can clamp it off. Now if you're removing it, it's not so bad, because you can just rip that rubber gaiter off, get a pair of grips on the shaft, and then spin the nut off. But obviously when you put it back together with a brand new rubber gaiter, which is what I've done, you know, how do you grip that shaft without going through the rubber? There's nothing on the top of it to grip hold of, it's all internal. So I had to jury rig up some ratchet straps around this, going down under the wheel to sort of try and lock this down in place, and then using a screwdriver. Oh, it was an absolute nightmare. I thought I got it on enough, but clearly I haven't, because there's a bit of pivot in it. So that's something I'll have to sort out at a later date. There's about 1 mil of thread showing on the bottom of that nut, and on the side that didn't spin, there's about 2 mil of thread on the bottom of the nut. So I need to get that nut done up a few more turns yet. How? I don't know. I'll figure something out. Yeah, so we now have steering, which is much easier should I have to move the car. I had the scaffolders come and collect scaffolding the other day, so I had to clear this side of the house out, and I had to roll the car out onto the driveway and then go round a corner so I could get my van out for work. And trying to turn this thing round corners with no steering is an absolute nightmare. Lots of grabbing over the wheels and kicking them and trying to turn it, and it was an absolute pain in the ass. And obviously getting it back in here, as you can see, it's a pretty tight fit. I've got literally 2 or 3 inches on this side and maybe a foot on this side, so trying to manoeuvre the bloody thing back in again is a nightmare. What else? So my carb linkage is done. I had to fabricate a bolt to go in here because I wasn't paying 20 quid for this new bolt, so we managed to actually fabricate one by cutting off the old thread, drilling it, tapping it, making a new thread. So that is my choke linkage. She's a bit squeaky, but I don't care. All the springs are in place, the chokes move properly, etc. So they're all back on again, good to go. What else? Oh, I do need to put that choke cable back through there. I'll do it later. My proper speedo cable has been dispatched, so I'm not going to put this dash back in properly yet. There's only literally a nut holding that dash in, because obviously I've got to pull it forward again to put the cable on the back of the speedo. Trying to do it up from underneath in there is an absolute nightmare. There's looms of wires and heating vents and things in there, and you just can't get to it. It's a pain in the ass. What else? Oh yeah, I had a missing bolt from my drive shaft, my prop shaft. So found another bolt. So that is all bolted back up again. So that's all where it should be. Put the knobs back on the heaters, painted them silver. It's a little bit crude, but they're good to go. I did actually find a small bulb when I put the instruments back in. So one of my instruments is missing a bulb and I don't know which one. Pain in the ass. Also, my new windscreen seal has arrived. So at some point I'm going to have to bite the bullet, man up, put my big boy pants on and get that windscreen out. And I must admit, I'm really not looking forward to it. I do not like handling glass at the best of times. You apply leverage to the wrong area of it and the whole thing will just go. So trying to get out of here, so I'm guessing what I'll do is I'll cut this old seal out with a Stanley knife just to actually make removal easier once I figure out how to get the wiper arms off, because they're stuck on tight. Normally they're just on a splines tapered shaft and you just pop them off, but these ones, I don't know, they don't seem to want to come off. They could be stiff, but then again you don't want to rip them off, so I'll have to consult the old manual for that. And once I get those wipers off, I can obviously get that screen out, leave the screen out then. And obviously until we respray it, I can then mask everything else off when we finally come to doing the respray. And then one of the last jobs will be to put that windscreen back in again. If you're going to take it out, you may as well leave it out until you respray it. Okay, we're down at the workshop again today. Having a look at one of the doors. So this is the, what's this door? This is the left-hand door, passenger door. This is the worst one. The other door is actually okay. Now, as you can probably see on the bottom edge there, it's completely gone all the way along that bottom edge, and also up here. Can't see it in the sun very well, I do apologise, but the corner of this door here and where the lock mechanism goes in here is completely gone, so all this needs to be cut out and refabricated. I thought if I could find a door cheap enough, I'll just buy a replacement door, which is what most sane people would do, but I don't fall into that category, and these doors are not cheap. So I'm going to make some replacement panels to go on there instead. As you can see, I've started cutting a template for this bottom edge, and I'll do the same for the other ones. We'll get all that rust cut out and get replacement panels welded in, get it all nice. Luckily the glass is okay, so they're not cheap either. One of the problems we do have is the window runner. If we go into the workshop here, so I've got the parts here laid on top of the vacuum former we use, all laid out, and as you can see, the left hand side of that window runner there is completely gone. That top edge is completely gone. There should be another piece that sits on this edge here, which sits inside the window runners. You can see the other side, the piece is still on the end there, it clips onto the glass, but that side has fallen off, so obviously it's rusted. Oh, it's there. That bit should be attached onto there, and that is where the window sits. So it's completely gone, which means one of three things. I can either A, try and fabricate a new window runner, B, I can buy one, but they're not cheap and there aren't many of them available. They're about 100 quid just for that runner on the top, not the actual scissor mechanism there, just that bronze coloured runner. Or I can actually not put the window mechanism in it at all, which is something I'm tempted to do, because if it's going to be a convertible and if it's only going to get used in the sunshine, do I even want windows in it? I know they're handy if you're driving quickly and, you know, stop you getting blown around, but do I really need to have glass in the doors? I haven't quite decided yet. So while I'm deciding, we'll get this door put bright again, and then I can decide what I want to do with the windows. Okay, so step one, template made up for that. Well, there's your problem. So cut the rust out of the door, or the inside anyway. Obviously made our paper template up, we can now transfer that to steel. We'll actually cut this 5mm high at the top so we can joggle that edge down so that we get a nice little lip to go underneath there, and then we can seam weld it in quite nicely. We'll do that one first, and then we'll do the door skin afterwards, just so I've got a sort of reference point that I can come back to with the skin, if that makes sense, rather than cut both off at the same time and then be sort of guessing where it wants to come to. And then we'll chop that monstrosity out and do the same thing again. But first of all, let's get this template in steel. Right, so here is our metal panel. What? No. Whatever you want, no. Excuse the sound of the airplane. It's another beautiful day in Cornwall. Better than a kick in the arse, isn't it? What? You've both had a pretzel, now go away. So this is our replacement panel we've put in. Sorry, we've cut. So looks like 1mm mild steel. Started to put the bend in. Obviously it's got two bends. It's got the primary bend at the top, and then it's got the secondary bend at the bottom, which the door skin is then going to wrap around. And if you, don't know how well you can see it on camera, but that top edge has been joggled down. So you can see it's just got a slight step along that top edge. It's quite actually hard to joggle 1mm steel. You might be able to just see on that one as well. You can't see it very well on camera, but it's got a slight step on that top edge. So the idea is, when the panel goes underneath there, that lip goes underneath there and then pulls up. So I'm trying to film it and hold it at the same time. It's not really working very well. And that obviously gives you a nice solid base to run a bead of weld through. So we've got our primary bend in there. Just needs a little bit more bending. The bits on the end will have to be bent around this way as they curve around the door. Same on that end, that will get curved around this way. But what I'll probably do is tack it on the door first and then bend it as I go, rather than try and bend it in a vise and keep bringing it back, taking it to the door and trying to get it the right shape. So it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So we'll get that one tacked in as soon as I get some more gas with the welder. And once that one's in and I've got my edge and I know where that edge comes to, then I'll take the bottom of that skin off and I'll do the same thing, make a replacement flat panel for the other side of the door, and then that skin will then come up to here, get curled over this one, tap it down along there with a hammer, and then obviously we can weld it, fill it, make sure there's no water's going to get in it. I know I keep saying it, it's not going out in the rain again, but you know, always want to damp proof things if you can. Of course the problem you get is with any car doors is that the water hits the glass, runs down the inside of the door, collects in the bottom of the door, seeps between where the door skin wraps around the door frame, and of course once water gets between two metal surfaces like that, it will just, you know, start to eat its way from the inside out. Hence why the bottom edge of doors always goes on pretty much any car, to be honest. It's one of those areas where they do just go. And I think this one was left propped up against a wall somewhere, probably on this corner. You can see this corner is sort of caved in, it's dented in. So my guess is it's been stood on that corner, and hence why it's rusted all around here as well. The water has then come down, collected in this corner, and has then obviously rusted it through. So you've had the primary rusting in the bottom of the door, probably just from age, and then the secondary rusting here where it's been taken off, put to one side to be done another day. It's then got wet again, and obviously the moisture's come through the door and then rotted it out here. That's what I'm guessing either way. Anyway, doesn't make any difference because either way it still needs to be cut out and replaced. So yeah, so we're getting there. Okay, so I've just had a little clear out under my work desk here of a load of the bits that are still to go in. So let's have a quick look at those bits and see what's left. So firstly the seats. As I say, I've reupholstered the seats. They don't look like it right now, but they have been reupholstered. I've just got to put the foam back into one of them, and I'll put some fresh foam in there as well just to hold it all together. So a couple of seats there with headrests, spare wheel, fuel tank, some trim parts. So I found the driver's pockets and the passenger pocket. So these are like parcel shelf pockets rather than glove boxes, if you know what I mean. Obviously they're just made from card, so I'll have to remake those. But I can take these ones apart and use them as templates, so that's all good. That's your transmission tunnel we've seen earlier on. A bit mice have been at it. There's a cover back there for the boot that goes inside the boot. We've got the spare wheel cover. We've got a load of the rubber trim parts and a seat base. So rubber trim parts will obviously be for the door trims. Front grille. Some metal trim parts and some tin. I'll have to work out where they go. I've got two of these. These are like the supports that go from the rear axle to the body. That's the old air filter box. I'm going to scrap that because it's crap. I'll just put a couple of the chromed pancake air filters on it. This little panel here, not too sure what that does yet. I'll have to find a home for that. Also got the original jack that comes with it. We have the roof. And then some interior trim parts. Again, handbrake covers. These are like the inside rear quarters, seat belt, and again, what looks like a centre armrest maybe, handbrake cover, something like that. So that's most of the parts there. Obviously the big parts such as the bonnet and the boot still to go on, and the doors. And then in my workshop we've got some rear lights in there. I've got a bucket full of lights down there, so the front lights, indicators, that sort of thing. That's an EGR valve for my T4, don't worry about that. And again, some more metal trim parts down there, hubcaps, light covers, and a couple other metal parts. I think they're just support bars for the roof, not too sure yet. And a couple of latches there for the bonnet as well. Oh, and up here we have the chrome bumpers. That's an under tray for my T4, ignore that. Chrome bumpers, plastic parts, and what I'm guessing is a fuel line in there as well. And then lastly, this Quality Street tin was full of nuts and bolts when I started, and this is what I've got left, so I've done pretty well. I've got a couple of these rubber things. These are for the body mounts, I'm sure. These look like hose clips. I haven't come across where they are required yet, nor have I come across where these are required yet. And some of these things as well. I've got what appears to be 5 of these. I want to say these may be spacers for the doors, not too sure. These, no idea. Something to do with the indicators, no idea. And then lastly a few miscellaneous bolts. Again, these will be body mounting bolts because I haven't actually mounted the shell to the body yet. I'm waiting to see if I've actually got all the bolts I need to do that, or whether I need to buy a new body mounting kit. You can get a new body mounting kit for about 30 quid, so it's not the end of the world, but also if I don't need to buy it, then I won't. So again, we've got some random bolts and things here as well. So I'll have to have a look and see where they all go.